started with our panel discussion now. First of all, hello everybody. Welcome to this panel we've put together called From Production to Consumption. It's a conversation on the coffee supply chain, just to talk about the where coffee comes from and then how it moves through various different hands to the consumer at the end point. First of all, thank you very much to Copper Door for allowing us to come in here and use this beautiful space. Thank you. Thanks to Dean at Ally Importers. Yay. He had the idea for this whole thing. He reached out to me and Sam and basically said, Katia's coming to town. It would be really great if you could have a panel discussion. So we said, great, we would love to. So thanks, Dean, for that idea. And thanks to Sam for providing us snacks and for taking care of the live stream and helping put this together. Thanks to Montucky Cold Snacks for the beers.
It's on my face.
Yes. And thank you to the panelists for being here. We appreciate you sharing your expertise and your perspectives on the supply chain. So first of all, we want to just quick recognize that not all voices and perspectives are represented here. So we have 5 coffee professionals who have various experience, but there are still people on the supply chain who are not here. So there are gaps. So just keep that in mind as we're going through this. And also, most of us, Katia is from Honduras. The rest of us are from the United States. So just keep that in mind also as we're going through this. We're coming from a particular perspective. And yeah, we're going to get going now. So the outline, the way this will work, first of all, the panelists will each give us like a 5 to 10 minute talk about their role in the supply chain, what they do with the coffee, how they take it from one person and give it to the next person. And yeah, we'll do that. And then we're going to open up to questions from the audience. And I have some questions as well to fill in some time and get more information. So first of all, I'm going to introduce all of our panelists here. So first of all is Katia Duke. She is a coffee producer and owner of Finca San Isidro in Copan Ruinas in Honduras. She's a 4th generation coffee producer, so coffee has been in her family for a long time. And she has led the charge in transforming her family's farm from conventional to specialty coffee. So she's brought in African beds. She's really done some cool things with experimentation on different processes and has focused on women's empowerment at the farm level. So, everybody, this is Katia.
Woo!
I'll introduce everybody first. No, my bad. All right, next we have Nicole Diefenbach, and she is sourcing and green sales. She has started her own company with her husband Kevin called Roam Bravely. They are a producer-focused subscription service, and they're also leading Origin Trips, which is a new venture for them. So that's really cool. You can check out their website, roambravely.com. And she has held a number of positions in green coffee over the last number of years, and including travels to and through El Salvador in a camper van with her husband and their 2 puppies, huskies, so that's a feat. And yeah, that's Nicole, everybody. And next we have Jess Brooks, who is a sourcer and green buyer at Allegro Coffee Company. She's been in green coffee for a very long time. She's seen Allegro through a number of different substantial transitions. Through all of the years, and she travels extensively to Origin to find coffees, and I believe has helped develop the Allegro's quality control metrics and everything, and the standards for farms, including social incentives, quality and also like environmental standards at origin. So yeah, that's Jess. Next we have Shelby Williamson, who is a head roaster at Huckleberry, and also our 2019 United States Roaster Champion. She's the best roaster in the United States, everyone. Right here in Denver. So she's held a bunch of roasting positions, mostly in and around Denver, Boulder area. Fun fact, she's never been a barista. Yeah, that's just a fun fact, I thought. I had the pleasure of spending Roasters Guild retreat last year with Shelby, and she's the most inquisitive and technological roaster that I know. So she's the best roaster in the U.S. Yay! Yay for Shelby. And next we have Sloane Wachob, who is the barista and actually starting in roasting position at Logan House Coffee Company. Sloane has worked at a bunch of shops in and around Denver and competed in Brewers Cup over the last couple of years, where they made semifinals 2 years ago. So made that coffee taste really, really good for those judges. And Sloane is going to be talking about kind of the front of house and the customer-facing side of the supply chain, even though they have a bunch of experience in the roasting side as well. So, great. Now, we'll start our journey with our little coffee seeds, our little coffee plants in Honduras with Katia.
Well, thank you. Well, as you say, coffee's been part of my life for 4 generations. Coffee production for my family means employment for my community, income, history, identity, and it's a way to contain migratory problems in Honduras. October 13, 2018, a group of 1,600 people start the migrant walk, pushed by extremely poverty and the lack of well-paying jobs. Up to the present date, and without an improvement in coffee prices, Honduras has already faced 6 large displacements of people. For us as coffee producers, it has represented the loss of a portion of our harvest. For Honduras, producing coffee represents 1 million direct and indirect jobs in a population of 8 million inhabitants. That it means 1 of every 8 people in Honduras depends on coffee. It's a large number. And I'm sorry, so I just need to follow this. But 600,000 families depend directly on coffee production. 120,000 families produce coffee. And for Honduras is one of the main export items. The annual GDP for Honduras is 22.68 billion of a total export annually of 8.2, and coffee will be a portion of that. Well, in 2012, Finca San Isidro faced the destruction of our coffee plantation and a 70% by the rust. So we was forced to break the traditional family production model. My father did not agree, but I was determined to change that model, but it wasn't helping us at that moment. Well, one of the things that I really want to highlight at this point is As conventional coffee producers, we don't know where the final destination of our product lies. We depend on petty market prices, and we become invisible to the industry, paying our loans to the banks so we don't lose our lands, and ensure the daily nourishment of our families is the greater motivation as a coffee or as a small coffee producer. The relation, and this is another thing that I want to highlight, and it's very important. The relationship between coffee producers and coffee buyers become extremely important to have an additional income that can be reinvested to improve process. But in the current situation of the market price and a aggressive climate change, many families will abandon the cultivation. Well, that was one of my biggest challenge when I decided to get into the specialty coffee. We need to reinvest our income to make better coffee, but if you're not making that income, you cannot build or fix your fermentation tanks, or if you want to build the raised beds, you can do it. But I was not willing to remain visible. I was firm in my decision to enter in the production of specialty coffees, and well, I used my savings to repair the collection center. I built new fermentation tanks, or in African beds or raised beds, and well, because with that I can have full control of the process of coffee. I changed the fertilization plants, and I started my own experiments. However, the most important thing was investing my money in acquiring knowledge. I am a barista, a roaster, and I become a copper. Motivated by an experience with a coyote. I don't know if you're familiar with this term, but it's like our middleman. And this guy told me that my coffee wasn't good enough. So he decided the price that he wanted to pay, and I swore myself that would be the last time for me. So I made many changes. Now I separate my lots, and I decide which is good, and I can safely get into a copy table and to a negotiation table because I know my product. But what happens when you produce a good quality product? You need to have someone to sell the coffee. And I think that is one of the biggest challenges for a coffee producer. But added to this, your client must to be in the same harmony and share the same vision and mission that you have. Sometimes we get customers that want organic coffee. They want a preparation of 5 defects in coffee and social projects, and also good payment for employees, but they only have a budget of $1.50. So we can get into that conversation, but it's gonna be long. But I think do not sound fair. And just for like a little, for making you think about it, the U.S. government is making right now, like 3 to 4 times the money that is being paid, well, money in taxes, more than the people in producing countries are making for the beans. And I'm sorry for my broken English.
On import taxes?
No. We're talking about the taxes that is being generated by selling the cup of coffee, like lattes and cappuccinos, and yeah.
Wow.
It's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
Well, and so after that, I think if you have questions as plantation or varietals or something else, so I'm open. But I wanted to share that data because it's very important to highlight why coffee is so important for people like me in producing countries like Honduras. As you see, there is a lot of people who depends on the production of the coffee.
Thank you, Katia. Yeah, that's all really, really interesting data. And we'll open up to questions for Katia after the end of the rest of the panel. So now we go on to Nicole.
Great job.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful.
Second language. Wow.
Yeah, your English is fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, I'm
Now
not.
I'm fluent. Then I'm
Not.
fluent.
Hello, everybody. I'm Nicole. As Kat said, I started a company with my husband called Run Bravely. Started by a DIY road trip, origin trip to El Salvador, where both him and I worked on a small specialty farm for about 6 months, from picking all through processing. It was their first honey process on the farm, so that was really special to be a part of. And then when we came back to the States, I worked for a few small importers and exporters out of Kenya, which is an origin that is unique in of itself as far as the difficulties that go on in getting coffee in and out of the country. One benefit of working with small companies is that you get to do everything. So I got to work with our sourcers and exporters at origin in Kenya based on green buyers' preferences, needs, landing times, all kinds of crazy preferences, matching green coffees with them, making sure the samples get here, coordinating logistics, writing contracts. Just a little bit of everything on the green side, which is really what I was looking for as far as, if you were saying, getting that knowledge, that hands-on education. I really wanted to work in coffee, and I wanted to know where I could apply my expertise to make the biggest impact, which was part of why I really wanted to work at Origin, to understand and just have a little bit more of a glimpse of what I was trying to focus on. So now this year, through Run Bravely, I have initiated a few Origin projects, one of which is a direct trade buying group with Moru Coffee, kind of sitting right there. So basically, our entire goal is to connect coffee producers with coffee roasters and green buyers, which is extremely difficult to do for a variety of reasons. When you're big, you have more resources, but even all of our big guys, like our great sponsors at Ally, have boxes to check and a million things to do in order to make one transaction happen. And everything that can go wrong from the time they mill it to the time it lands, and even from landing to a port, getting it to Denver is a whole hassle in and of itself. But I had made a lot of roaster friends, and people kept asking me the same questions about exporting, importing, and logistics, which is how this all came about. Initially, like Kat said, we have a producer-focused coffee subscription that's launching in July. And because of that, we facilitated a direct trade import with a producer partner in El Salvador for the first time. And then we'll also have a Honduras representative and a Colombian. And then in 2020, we hope to expand to Southeast Asia because we have an export group there producing specialty coffee. And like you were saying, they're just doing amazing things at Origin all over. And not enough people are talking about it. There's not enough people telling their stories. And that's really what I'm trying to do with these Origin initiatives through Roam Bravely. With the Origin trips, because I got hooked at Origin, that's a big motivation to lead those. So they'll be focused for baristas, industry people outside of green buyers, as well as consumers. With that new revenue channel in ecotourism, I'm hoping to help bridge that gap of revenue creation at Origin. As much as we want to pay more for our coffee and everyone's going in that direction, I don't personally believe we're going to get there fast enough before people start abandoning because there's not enough influx of cash. So diversifying sales channels at Origin is what I'm trying to do. Yes. So now we're going to Honduras.
And we also have Mayan ruins in Honduras.
Very
Hi, everybody. I'm Jess. I work for Allegro Coffee Company here in Denver, and I'm a green buyer and the supply chain manager for Allegro. I've been with Allegro in various roles for about 10 years, off and on. My role in the supply chain is an interesting one, and a challenging one, and a unique one, and I feel right at home in the middle here because that's really where my role lives very much is in the middle. So I think in a lot of ways I have a very easy job in some respects, and also a lot of responsibility and also a lot of challenges in other respects. The easy part is also kind of the sad part in the supply chain is there's a lot of coffee out there, and there's a lot of producers, there's a lot of importers, there's a lot of people in that supply chain that have coffee and need to sell coffee and need access to a market and need access to a buyer. So the challenge of buying coffee, the act in itself of buying coffee, is really super straightforward. There's coffee there, there's a need, there's a buyer. The tricky part is doing that in a way that makes sense for everybody along the supply chain. So that's really my role, and the not easy part is the seriousness of that. So how do I best represent in those purchases the needs of my roasters, my baristas, essentially my consumer at the end of the chain, but also look back to the beginning of the chain at the producer and how to I initiate a purchase that really is a win-win for everybody along that chain. So that's my main goal as a buyer. My role with the company, we buy a really wide range of quality of coffees, anywhere from specialty at an 80 cup to specialty at a almost 90 cup. We do about 11.5 million pounds green coffee a year for various customers and various needs. So I have the unique opportunity in some respects to see different qualities, different prices, different needs all along that full range of specialty, which poses challenges in and of itself. My perspective is a little bit wide, and that I don't just deal with the top end or the bottom end, a little bit of everything in between. So really my goal as a buyer is coming back to these mutual beneficial relationships. So what I look for in purchasing is, are my needs met? Are my consumers' needs met as far as what I need for quality, price targets that I need to hit, other aspects of the coffee that happen to be important to my ethos as a buyer, as well as the ethos of my company and its values. So that's this end, but on the other end, looking at things like price transparency all the way down through the chain, which is super important, that I can account for every cost associated with bringing that coffee to me, that it makes sense, that it's legit, that it's fair to everyone, so everybody can maintain and thrive in their own businesses. So price transparency, making sure that I'm meeting and exceeding the cost of production for all of the coffees that I'm purchasing, and really understanding what those production costs are and the needs of the producer. So the challenge in my position is we buy from about 25, 26 different origins, different groups within the origins. And I think the role of the buyer is really to understand the dynamics and the complexities of each of those individual producers, each of those individual origins, and really try to find a buying plan that makes, again, sense for everybody, and that takes all of that complexity and nuance and all of that specialness of that unique producer or unique origin into account when we're making that purchase. When I look at buying a coffee, quality is the guy in the driver's seat, but there's a lot of other people in that car. It's a cheesy analogy, but it works really, really well. Quality is what we're all looking for. We all want that special, that tasty, that high quality cup of coffee. That's how we assess value in our world, by cup score and quality of that coffee. But when I'm looking at making a purchase, that's one piece, but quality in and of itself isn't really truly sustainable. There's other pieces that come into account. So that price transparency, that fair price that I can pay for that coffee, but also looking at other social and economic conditions with that particular producing group in that particular region, environmental impacts of that coffee. Those are the other people in the back seat and the passenger seat of the car. So just as important, and for me as a buyer, just as important as assessing the value of that coffee, not just based on the quality, but all of those other aspects. So when I look for coffees, I also look for developing long-term partnerships with producing groups that I'm working with. That's hugely important, so that I can go in and have that coffee for my needs and my baristas and roasters' needs for the long term, right? So that I have that guaranteed supply, but also on the producer side, that there's a guaranteed customer for that coffee year after year. So that's one of my core and my company's core values, is looking at repeat and long-term partnerships with suppliers, so that again it's beneficial for everybody along the chain. The other thing that's a really important part of my role as a green buyer is, whether it's a good thing or not, I'm not sure, but I tend to be the person that's kind of the gatekeeper for this end, for that story piece or that origin piece or that coffee information piece, to get our baristas and our roasters engaged in the products that we have, and engaged and knowledgeable about this end of the supply chain. So an important part of my role is passing that information on and distributing that information and making sure that people understand the importance of everybody along the piece of the chain. So yeah, that's a little bit about my role.
Well, I'm Shelby. I work at Huckleberry Roasters. I'm their head roaster. So for me, my main job is to make sure that the coffee is actually produced in a consumable form to pass on to our baristas. That's what I do. So main responsibility is actually roasting the coffees that we actually have inventory, creating profiles that make sense for each of those coffees, because every coffee is different, creating and maintaining blends, how different coffees can come together and make an entirely new product, managing the coffee through its life cycle, because coffee changes from month to month, day to day sometimes, depending on the temperature in the room. Overall quality control is super important to me as a roaster, and I'll get into kind of what each of these things mean as I go down. Roaster maintenance, super important, and I'm also a second opinion on the buying table. Like she was saying, that being a part of a small company is pretty awesome because you get to do a lot of things. Huck is still pretty small, so I'm able to kind of have my hands in a bunch of different pots, and green buying is our green buyer's responsibility 100%, but I definitely sit at the table and I'm able to give that second opinion to say, yeah, I taste the same things you do, or maybe I taste a defect that you don't. But yeah, so roasting, pretty straightforward. Following pre-planned roast based on how many orders we get in. Hopefully it's a nice high number so I can roast as much coffee as I physically can and get more green inventory through the door.
And it's also important for me to be running trials on different profiles so that I can make sure that we're getting the best coffee that we can out of that particular origin or that particular lot. Just because two roasts of the same exact coffee done in a different way can taste completely different. So it's always really important for us to be constantly throwing maybe like one trial and then blending it into 5 that